The jungle canopy above Guadalcanal hung thick and suffocating in the pre-dawn darkness of August 1942. Private First Class Marcus Webb crouched behind a rotting log, his standard-issue M1 Garand resting across his knees, its 8-round clip feeling suddenly inadequate against what was coming. The metallic taste of fear mixed with the humidity that soaked through his fatigues. Around him, 23 other Marines of Baker Company maintained their positions along the defensive perimeter, each man alone with his thoughts as insects hummed their relentless chorus. Webb's hands trembled slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the electric anticipation that precedes combat. He had been in the Solomon Islands for 11 days, long enough to understand that the Japanese snipers in these jungles were something different, something terrifying in their patience and precision. Back home in rural Montana, Marcus Webb had grown up with a rifle in his hands before he could properly write his own name. His father ran a modest ranch outside of Billings, where predators and long distances made marksmanship not a hobby, but survival skill. By age 12, Marcus could drop a coyote at 300 yards with his father's battered Winchester carbine, a compact lever-action rifle that became an extension of his body. The weapon was short, maneuverable, quick to aim, and perfectly suited for the unpredictable encounters that range from barn to tree lean. While other boys his age fumbled with their father's heavy bolt-action rifles, Marcus moved to the Montana hills like a shadow, the carbine's lightweight allowing him to climb, crawl, and shoot from positions that would exhaust anyone carrying standard military rifles. When Marcus enlisted in January 1942, just weeks after Pearl Harbor, he brought with him an unconventional confidence about rifles that would soon put him at odds with military doctrine. During basic training at Camp Pendleton, instructors drilled into every recruit the supremacy of the M1 Garand, the semi-automatic rifle that General George Patton called the greatest battle implement ever devised. The Garand was powerful, accurate at long range, and its 8-round M-block clip system represented cutting-edge military technology. But Marcus noticed something the instructors dismissed when he mentioned it. The Garand was also 43 inches long and weighed nearly 10 pounds fully loaded. In the close-quarters combat drills, Marcus found himself constantly snagging the long barrel on obstacles, struggling to bring the weapon to bear quickly in simulated jungle environments. He remembered his father's carbine, how it had moved with him rather than against him. The Marine Corps did issue carbines, specifically the M1 Carbine, but these were reserved for officers, NCOs, and specialist troops like radio men and mortar crews. The reasoning was coldly practical. Carbines fired a smaller, less powerful cartridge than the Garand's .30 caliber rifle round. They were considered adequate for self-defense, but insufficient for frontline infantry work, where stopping power and range were paramount. When Marcus suggested during training that carbines might be more effective in jungle warfare, his drill instructor shut him down with brutal efficiency. Doctrine was doctrine. The Garand was the infantryman's rifle. Period. Any deviation suggested weakness, and weakness got Marines killed. Marcus learned to keep his mouth shut, but the idea never left him. Guadalcanal shattered many assumptions about warfare. The island terrain was a nightmare of dense jungle, steep ridges, and limited sight lines that rarely exceeded 50 yards. The Japanese defenders had transformed the environment into a killing ground through their mastery of camouflage and positional warfare. Their snipers were legendary and terrifying, often tying themselves into treetops where they would remain motionless for days, waiting for a single perfect shot. They targeted officers first, then NCOs, then anyone who showed leadership. The psychological effect was devastating. Marines learned to move in constant fear of the single crack of a rifle that could come from any direction, any distance, followed by a comrade dropping dead with no warning. Baker Company had lost 6 men to snipers in the past week, including their platoon sergeant, a tough career Marine who had survived Haiti and Nicaragua only to be killed by a bullet that came from somewhere in the endless green above them. No one saw the shooter. No one even saw a muzzle flash. The body dropped, and the jungle swallowed the sound. Lieutenant Hayes, their platoon commander, was visibly rattled despite his efforts to project confidence. The sniper threat was eroding morale faster than direct combat because it was invisible, unpredictable, and seemingly unstoppable. Counter-sniper doctrine called for saturation fire into suspected positions, but ammunition was precious on Guadalcanal. and shooting at ghosts accomplished nothing. Marcus had been thinking about the problem with increasing obsession. The Japanese snipers relied on concealment and patience, but they also relied on their targets being slow to react. The standard response to sniper fire was to drop, take cover, and wait for orders. By then, the sniper had either repositioned or resumed his invisible watch. What if instead of going defensive, someone could respond with immediate, aggressive fire, not spray and pray, but aim shots delivered fast enough to suppress or kill the sniper before he could melt back into the jungle? The Garand was wrong for this. Its length made quick target acquisition in dense vegetation nearly impossible, and its weight slowed transition between targets. But a carbine, light and fast, could change the equation. The problem was that Marcus did not have a carbine, and military supply channels were not designed to accommodate private requests based on personal preference. Baker Company supply sergeant laughed when Marcus asked if he could somehow acquire an M1 Carbine. Officers and specialists had first claim, and there were never enough to go around anyway. Marcus would have to make do with his Garand like every other rifleman. But Marcus Webb had not survived Montana winters and predator-filled nights by accepting limitations. If official channels would not help him, he would find another way. 3 days before the incident that would change everything, Marcus made a decision that violated every regulation in the book. During a supply run to the division rear area, he noticed a damaged M1 Carbine lying among a pile of equipment salvaged from a crashed supply plane. The weapon stock was cracked, and the rear sight was bent, rendering it officially unserviceable and destined for return to a repair depot that might be months away. Marcus waited until the supply clerks were distracted, then quietly appropriated the carbine along with 4 spare 15-round magazines he found in a separate crate marked for officer issue. He wrapped the weapon in a shelter half and smuggled it back to his position. That night, by the light of a shielded candle, Marcus worked on the carbine with the kind of focus intensity he had learned from his father. The cracked stock he reinforced with wire and medical tape, creating an ugly but functional repair. The bent rear sight he carefully straightened using his combat knife as a lever and a flat rock as an anvil. He test-fired 3 rounds during artillery barrage the next day, when his shots would be masked by the explosions. The carbine functioned perfectly. Its light recoil and short length felt like coming home after months of wrestling with the Garand. Marcus hid the weapon beneath his position, wrapped in oilcloth, waiting for the moment when he might need it. The moment came on August 19th, during an operation that started as routine patrol and transformed into a nightmare. Baker Company was tasked with securing a ridge line approximately 1,000 yards inland from the defensive perimeter, an objective that required movement through some of the densest jungle on Guadalcanal. Intelligence suggested minimal Japanese presence, but intelligence on Guadalcanal was often wrong. Lieutenant Hayes split the company into 2 platoons for the advance, with Marcus's platoon taking point. The movement began at dawn, each Marine carrying 60 pounds of equipment through vegetation so thick that visibility dropped to mere feet. Marcus had made a critical decision that morning. He brought both his Garand and the hidden carbine, the latter concealed in his pack with the stock protruding just enough that he could draw it quickly. The extra weight was worth the flexibility, though he knew that if officers discovered his unauthorized weapon, he would face court-martial. But something in the air that morning, some instinct honed by years of hunting in Montana's backcountry, told Marcus that today would require every advantage he could muster. The jungle seemed too quiet, the bird calls too infrequent. These were signs that predators were near. They were 200 yards into the advance when the first shot cracked through the canopy. Private Jensen, walking forth in the column, dropped without a sound, a bullet through his temple. The column froze, 19 Marines suddenly aware that death was watching them from above, but unable to see its location. Lieutenant Hayes shouted for dispersion and cover, standard doctrine that sent men diving behind trees and into depressions. A second shot followed 7 seconds later, hitting Corporal Daniels in the shoulder as he moved to better cover. The corporal screamed, and the sound seemed to echo through the jungle like a trapped animal. Marcus did not follow standard doctrine. While his companions went aground, he dropped his Garand and pulled the carbine from his pack in one smooth motion, his eyes already scanning the canopy above and ahead. He had noted the approximate direction of the first shot based on Jensen's head snap, a slight rightward motion that suggested the bullet came from their 10 o'clock position and above. The second shot at Daniels confirmed the angle. Marcus's mind calculated automatically, just as it had hundreds of times tracking deer and elk through Montana timber. The sniper was somewhere in the triple canopy, roughly 30 degrees left of their line of advance, elevated at least 40 feet. Using a position that provided clear sight lines down the trail they were following. Most Marines would see only an impenetrable wall of green. Marcus saw patterns, subtle asymmetries in branch structure and leaf density that suggested human presence. Approximately 40 yards ahead and left, there was a massive tropical hardwood with a peculiar crown formation that would provide both elevation and concealment. Marcus brought the carbine to his shoulder, the weapon's lightweight allowing him to aim standing despite the tension in his muscles. He focused on a shadow within the crown, darker than the surrounding foliage, roughly man-size and position where branches would support weight. He fired 3 rapid shots. The carbine's report sharp and quick compared to the Garand's deeper bark. The shots were not blind. Each was aimed at a specific point within the shadow, a triangulation designed to either hit the target or force movement. On the third shot, Marcus saw what he was looking for, a sudden shift in the shadow's position, branches moving in a pattern inconsistent with wind. The sniper was repositioning. Marcus adjusted his aim 2 feet right and slightly higher, leading the movement and fired twice more. The second bullet found its mark. The Japanese sniper fell from his perch with a crash that seemed impossibly loud after the jungle silence. He hit the ground 38 feet below his position, his Arisaka rifle clattering separately, and did not move. For 3 seconds, no one reacted. Then Lieutenant Hayes was screaming at Marcus, demanding to know where he got the carbine, why he was breaking cover, and who authorized him to fire. But the lieutenant's anger was undercut by something else, a recognition that Marcus had just done what trained counter-sniper teams often failed to accomplish. He had located and killed an invisible enemy in seconds. The platoon medic reached Jensen and Daniels. Jensen was dead before he hit the ground. Daniels would survive, the shoulder wound painful but not fatal. As Marines secured the sniper's body, they discovered he had been in his position for at least 2 days based on the food remains and waste in his improvised hide. He wore a camouflage suit made from local vegetation, and his face was painted to match the bark. His Arisaka was equipped with a telescopic sight, rare among Japanese forces, and indicating this was a trained specialist. In his pockets, they found a notebook with 12 hash marks, each presumably representing a kill. Marcus had just prevented numbers 13 and beyond. Lieutenant Hayes approached Marcus with an expression that mixed fury and calculation. The unauthorized weapon was a serious breach of regulations, but the results were undeniable. Hayes made a command decision that would ripple through battalion. He confiscated Marcus's carbine temporarily, then returned it within the hour with a verbal warning that if Marcus was going to carry non-standard equipment, he had better produce non-standard results. The implicit message was clear. Prove the carbine's worth beyond doubt or face consequences. Marcus accepted the terms. Word of the incident spread through Baker Company by nightfall and through the battalion by the next morning. Marines being Marines, the story grew in the telling. The carbine became a fence post because someone thought the taped and wired stock looked like something cobbled together from ranch materials. Marcus became the cowboy who brought Montana to the jungle, and the Japanese sniper became the first of what would become a legend, though that legend required 8 more kills to cement itself. The second kill came 36 hours later during a night defensive position when a Japanese infiltrator tried to enter Baker Company's perimeter. Marcus was on watch when he heard movement that was too rhythmic to be animal, too careful to be friendly. Using the carbine with a bayonet attached, he challenged once, received no response, and fired at the sound. The infiltrator was carrying a sword and grenades, clearly intended to cause maximum chaos in the sleeping Marines. Marcus's single shot through the chest stopped him 15 feet from the nearest foxhole. The third and fourth kills happened simultaneously during a Japanese banzai charge 3 days later. As waves of enemy infantry rushed Baker Company's position, Marcus used the carbine's fast handling to engage multiple targets, while other Marines were still cycling their Garand actions. He dropped one Japanese soldier at 20 yards, transitioned to a second, target at 35 yards, and killed both before they could close with the line. His Garand-armed companions were impressed, but not yet convinced. Close-range defensive fire was one thing. The real test would be counter-sniper work, and that test was coming. The 5th through 9th kills occurred during 48 hours that would become the defining moment of Marcus Webb's war and the unofficial validation of his unorthodox approach. Baker Company was assigned to hold a critical junction, where two trails met in dense jungle approximately 3 miles inland from Henderson Field. The captured airstrip that was Guadalcanal's strategic prize. Intelligence indicated Japanese forces were using the trails for nighttime resupply and reinforcement, and Baker Company's mission was interdiction and observation. The position was tactically sound but psychologically nightmarish. Dense jungle surrounded the junction on all sides, creating unlimited sniper positions and making conventional counter-sniper operations nearly impossible. The Japanese recognized the junction's importance and assigned their own forces to eliminate Baker Company, but rather than direct assault, they deployed snipers. Multiple snipers, operating independently, each selecting positions that provided overlapping fields of fire. The result was a siege that began with First Lieutenant Hayes taking a round through the throat while examining a map at what he thought was concealed position. The lieutenant died within minutes, and command fell to Staff Sergeant O'Brien, a veteran of China duty who immediately recognized they were facing not one sniper, but several operating in coordination. Over the next 6 hours, Baker Company suffered 3 more casualties without firing an effective shot in return. The snipers were invisible, their muzzle flashes concealed by foliage, their shots coming from different angles that suggested they were communicating and adjusting their positions based on Marine responses. Morale was collapsing. Marines huddled in their foxholes, afraid to move, afraid to even look up. Standard counter-sniper doctrine called for requesting artillery or air support to saturate suspected positions, but communications were intermittent due to atmospheric conditions, and requesting fire missions on their own position was a desperation move that O'Brien was not yet ready to make. Marcus had been observing the pattern of fire with growing understanding. The snipers were good, exceptional even, but they were following a predictable rotation. The first shot came from roughly northeast. 12 minutes later, a second shot from due east. 17 minutes after that, a third shot from southeast. The pattern suggested 3 snipers working a clockwise rotation, each firing from a new position to prevent return fire, then repositioning during the interval when their companions were engaging. It was tactically brilliant, keeping the Marines suppressed while minimizing each sniper's exposure. But patterns could be exploited. Marcus approached Staff Sergeant O'Brien with a proposal that was either tactically innovative or suicidal, depending on perspective. Marcus would deliberately expose himself to draw sniper fire, but he would be moving with the carbine ready, anticipating the shot location based on the pattern. When the sniper fired and revealed his position, Marcus would have approximately 2 seconds before the sniper could reload and fire again, assuming the Japanese were using bolt-action Arisaka rifles. 2 seconds to locate muzzle flash, acquire target, and return fire. The carbine's lightweight and fast handling made it theoretically possible. The Garand's length and bulk made it practically impossible. O'Brien listened to the proposal with the grim expression of a man weighing bad options against worse ones. He asked Marcus if he understood that the plan required him to become bait, that Japanese snipers at this skill level rarely miss their first shot, and that even if Marcus located the sniper, hitting a concealed target at unknown range within 2 seconds was nearly impossible. Marcus acknowledged all of this, then pointed out that doing nothing guaranteed more Marines would die, that artillery might kill as many friendlies as enemies in this dense terrain, and that he had not survived as long by accepting impossible odds without trying to change them. O'Brien gave his approval. Marcus prepared methodically, stripping unnecessary equipment to maximize mobility and loading the carbine with a fresh 15-round magazine plus 4 spares in easily accessible pouches. He studied the jungle canopy, memorizing the positions of major trees and the angles that will provide optimal sniper hides. He reviewed the timing of previous shots, noting that the enemy snipers seemed to wait until their target was engaged in an activity that suggested immobility, moments when the victim would be least likely to react to the shot. Marcus planned to fake that immobility, while remaining coiled to move. At 14:30 hours, Marcus stepped from his concealed position into a small clearing where Baker Company had been preparing fighting positions. He carried an entrenching tool and began digging, making a show of concentration on the task. To any observer, he was a Marine focused on improving his defensive position, exactly the kind of target sniper preferred. But Marcus's weight was balanced on the balls of his feet, his muscles loose and ready. The carbine rested against a nearby tree, one quick step away. His peripheral vision was expanded, watching not for the sniper but for the muzzle flash that would precede the bullet. The shot came at 14:34, exactly 13 minutes after the pattern suggested it would. Marcus saw the flash before he heard the report, a brief yellow-white bloom at his 2 o'clock position, elevated approximately 40 feet, in a dense cluster of tropical hardwood. The bullet cracked past his head close enough that he felt the pressure wave. Most men would have frozen or dropped. Marcus moved toward the carbine in a motion that was already beginning before conscious thought registered. His hand found the weapon's grip. His body rotated toward the flash source, and the carbine came to his shoulder as if magnetized there. He had perhaps 1.7 seconds before the sniper could cycle his bolt, reacquire, and fire again. Marcus did not have time for careful aim. This was instinctive shooting, the kind his father had taught him on running coyotes and darting rabbits, where the rifle moved with the eyes and the body knew the angles before the mind calculated them. Marcus fired 4 rapid shots into the area where muzzle flash had appeared, each shot adjusted slightly based on his understanding of how snipers position themselves in elevated hides. The 4th shot was rewarded with a visible disturbance in the foliage and a sound halfway between a grunt and a shout. The Japanese sniper fell from his position, but did not immediately hit the ground. His body caught in a network of vines approximately 20 feet below his hide, hanging suspended in a grotesque parody of the camouflage suits they wore. Marines from Baker Company could see him clearly now, swaying slightly, his rifle falling separately to impact the jungle floor with a distant thud. Marcus did not celebrate or lower his weapon. The pattern indicated 3 snipers, which meant 2 remained active, and now knew that return fire was not only possible but effective. The tactical situation had shifted from siege to duel. 8 minutes passed in tense silence. Baker Company Marines remained under cover, while Marcus held his position in the clearing, making himself bait again, but now with the carbine raised and ready. The remaining snipers faced a decision. They could withdraw, abandoning their mission to eliminate Baker Company. They could continue following their pattern, knowing that at least one Marine could respond effectively, or they could break pattern and attempt to kill Marcus specifically, eliminating the threat he represented. Japanese military culture and the evidence of their tactical sophistication suggested they would choose the 3rd option. The 2nd sniper revealed himself not through muzzle flash, but through the bullet's impact. The round hit a tree trunk 6 inches from Marcus's head, showering him with bark fragments. The shooter had fired from an unexpected angle, northwest instead of following the clockwise pattern, and he had missed only because Marcus had shifted his stance at the exact moment of the shot. Pure luck, but Marcus would take luck over precision any day. The carbine was already tracking toward the shot's origin, and this time Marcus had a clear sense of the sniper's position. The angle and height of the bullet's trajectory indicated a hide approximately 60 yards distant in a cluster of trees that formed a natural elevated platform. Marcus did not fire immediately. 60 yards was approaching the carbine's effective range limit, and shooting at an uncertain target would waste ammunition and reveal nothing. Instead, he moved laterally, forcing the sniper to adjust his aim if he wanted another shot. The movement was calculated to create an opportunity, and it worked. The sniper fired again, anticipating Marcus's movement but misjudging the speed. The bullet hit ground where Marcus would have been half a second earlier. But the muzzle flash was clear now, a specific location in the elevated platform, and Marcus had been moving toward it while the sniper was cycling his bolt. The carbine barked 3 times in rapid succession, each shot aimed at slightly different points within the platform, because Marcus could not see the sniper directly, only the probable area of concealment. The first 2 shots produced no visible effect. The 3rd shot was followed by a sharp cry and the sound of something heavy falling through branches. The 2nd sniper hit the ground and did not move. Staff Sergeant O'Brien, watching from concealment 30 feet away, would later state in his after-action report that Private First Class Webb's shooting under pressure was the finest display of combat marksmanship he had witnessed in 20 years of service. But the engagement was not finished. The third sniper remained unaccounted for, and he had now observed Marcus eliminate 2 of his companions. The tactical calculus had changed fundamentally. The third sniper was alone, his support structure eliminated, facing a Marine who had proven capable of rapid, accurate return fire. Doctrine would suggest the sniper withdraw to fight another day. But Japanese military culture in 1942 prioritized honor and mission completion above personal survival. The third sniper would attempt to kill Marcus regardless of the odds because retreat would be unthinkable. 21 minutes passed. Baker Company Marines began to hope the third sniper had indeed withdrawn. Marcus knew better. The wait was psychological warfare, an attempt to make him relax his guard or assume the threat was over. Marcus maintained his position in the clearing, carbine ready, eyes scanning the canopy in a systematic pattern that covered all potential approaches. His arms ached from holding the weapon at ready position, but he dared not lower it. The moment he showed relaxation would be the moment the third sniper fired. The third sniper made his attempt at 15-17 hours, and it nearly succeeded. The shot came from ground level, not elevated, breaking the pattern completely. The sniper had apparently climbed down from whatever position he had originally occupied and moved to a concealed position in heavy brush approximately 40 yards from Marcus's position. The angle was difficult, threading through jungle vegetation, but the bullet passed within inches of Marcus's chest. Only a slight turn of his body, a random shift in posture, saved him from a center mass hit that would have been immediately fatal. Marcus's response was automatic and devastating. The muzzle flash at ground level was unmistakable, and he poured 5 shots into brush where it had originated. The carbine's 15-round magazine allowing sustained fire that would have been impossible with the Garand's 8-round M-block clip. The brush erupted with movement as the sniper attempted to reposition, but he had waited too long. Marcus's 4th shot caught him in the upper torso as he rose to move, and the 5th shot ended the engagement permanently. The third sniper collapsed into the vegetation he had used for concealment, and the jungle fell silent again. Staff Sergeant O'Brien emerged from cover and approached Marcus with an expression that combined relief and something close to awe. In 48 hours, Marcus Webb had killed 5 Japanese snipers, 3 of them in a single engagement that had broken a tactical deadlock and saved Baker Company from what could have been complete decimation. The carbine that Marcus carried, the unauthorized fence post weapon that violated every regulation in the Corps manual, had proven itself beyond any doubt. O'Brien made an immediate decision that would bypass official channels and create precedent through combat necessity. He authorized Marcus to retain the carbine and assigned him as Baker Company's designated counter-sniper specialist. Word of the engagement spread through the division with the speed of legend formation. Marines who had mocked Marcus's fence post carbine now requested similar weapons. Supply sergeants who had laughed at carbine requests suddenly faced pressure from company commanders demanding immediate allocation of carbines for counter-sniper work. The battalion commander reviewed O'Brien's after-action report and recognized that Marcus Webb had accidentally discovered a tactical innovation that addressed one of Guadalcanal's most serious threats. Within 2 weeks, carbine allocation priorities were being reassessed, and experimental counter-sniper teams equipped with carbines were being formed across the division. Marcus killed 4 more Japanese snipers over the next 3 weeks, though none of the subsequent engagements matched the intensity of the 48-hour period that made his reputation. The fence post carbine became a talisman in Baker Company, and Marcus became someone junior Marines watched and tried to emulate. He taught informal classes on counter-sniper tactics, emphasizing mobility, pattern recognition, and the speed of response that light weapons enabled. He was careful to credit his father's teachings and Montana hunting experience, deflecting personal glory while sharing practical knowledge that saved lives. The bureaucratic aftermath of Marcus Webb's counter-sniper success revealed the complex relationship between combat innovation and military doctrine. While Baker Company and the battalion commander recognized the carbine's effectiveness in jungle warfare, higher headquarters struggled with the implications. allowing individual Marines to select their weapons based on personal preference threatened standardization, logistics, and the doctrinal assumptions that underpinned infantry training. The M1 Garand remained the official standard infantry rifle, its superiority at long range and stopping power considered essential for conventional warfare. A colonel from division headquarters arrived at Baker Company's position in early September to interview Marcus and observe the infamous fence post carbine firsthand. The colonel was a career officer who had fought in World War I and believed in the importance of discipline, standardization, and adherence to proven doctrine. He examined Marcus's carbine with obvious skepticism, noting its jury-rigged stock, unauthorized modifications, and the fact that Marcus had essentially stolen it from a salvage pile. The colonel's questions were pointed and designed to expose the flaws in Marcus's approach. What happened when engagement ranges exceeded the carbine's effective distance? What about the smaller cartridges' reduced stopping power? How could supply chains accommodate individual weapon preferences across thousands of Marines? Marcus answered with the respectful directness of a man whose arguments were grounded in survival rather than theory. Long-range engagements were rare in Guadalcanal's jungle, and when they occurred, designated marksmen with Garands or Springfield rifles could provide that capability. The carbine's cartridge had proven adequate for killing enemy soldiers at typical engagement distances, and its 15-round magazine capacity offset any individual round's reduced power. As for supply chains, Marcus suggested that carbines did not need to replace Garands entirely, but could supplement them in specific roles, just as the Corps already issued different weapons for different purposes. The key was matching the weapon to the tactical environment, rather than forcing every environment to accommodate a single weapon system. The colonel listened without commitment, then observed Baker Company during a patrol operation where Japanese sniper activity was expected. Marcus performed his counter-sniper role with the practice efficiency that came from weeks of combat experience, locating and engaging a sniper position that had pinned down the point squad. The engagement lasted less than 15 seconds from first shot to sniper elimination, a speed that would have been impossible with a full-length Garand. The colonel saw the result, nodded once, and departed without comment. His report to division headquarters was never made public, but its contents could be inferred from what followed. Official doctrine did not change immediately. The Marine Corps continued to designate the M1 Garand as the standard infantry rifle, and Marcus Webb received no formal recognition or commendation for his innovations. But at the tactical level, where combat realities outweighed bureaucratic inertia, change happened organically. Company commanders on Guadalcanal began requesting increased carbine allocations, and supply sergeants found creative ways to divert carbines toward infantry units that officially were not supposed to receive them. Junior officers returning from Guadalcanal to training commands brought stories of fence post carbines, and the Marine who had turned an unauthorized weapon into a life-saving tool. The stories influenced how those officers would later think about weapon selection and tactical flexibility. Marcus Webb's personal war continued until November 1942, when Baker Company was rotated off Guadalcanal after 4 months of continuous combat operations. He had accumulated 9 confirmed sniper kills, the 3 during 48 hours engagement forming the core of a legend that would follow him through the rest of his service. The fence post carbine came with him, though by now it had been officially recognized on his equipment roster after Staff Sergeant O'Brien filed paperwork that retroactively authorized his possession. The carbine showed where from hard use, its stock reinforcements frayed, and its finish worn away by jungle humidity, but remained functional and accurate. After Guadalcanal, Marcus participated in operations at Tarawa, Saipan, and Tinian, always carrying his carbine, and always serving in counter-sniper or reconnaissance roles where the weapon's characteristics were advantageous. His kill count increased, though he never spoke about specific numbers and deflected questions about his reputation. He survived the war without serious injury, a minor miracle given his combat exposure, and attributed his survival to a combination of skill, the right weapon, and substantial luck. The broader impact of Marcus Webb's fence post carbine was subtle but real. Post-war analysis of infantry weapons effectiveness in Pacific Theater jungle warfare noted that carbines, despite their official designation as supplementary weapons, had proven highly effective in typical engagement scenarios. This analysis influenced Korean War weapon selection and eventually contributed to development of the M14 and M16 rifles, both of which prioritized controllability and rate of fire over the raw power that had driven earlier rifle design. Marcus's insight that weapon characteristics should match tactical environment rather than conforming to universal standards became accepted wisdom, though few remember the Montana ranch kid who had proven the point by breaking regulations on Guadalcanal. Marcus Webb returned to Montana in December 1945 and resumed ranching with his father. He rarely spoke about his war experiences, and when he did, he focused on the men he had served with rather than his own actions. The fence post carbine hung above the fireplace in his ranch house, a battered reminder of how unconventional thinking and personal initiative could overcome institutional resistance. Local veterans knew the story, and it was told occasionally at American Legion gatherings, but Marcus never sought publicity or recognition. In 1983, a military historian researching Pacific Theater's small unit tactics contacted Marcus about his counter-sniper innovations and the fence post carbine legend. Marcus, by then 73 years old and still working his ranch, granted a single interview. He explained his thinking, described the tactical environment that had made the carbine necessary, and emphasized that he had simply applied hunting skills his father had taught him to a different kind of problem. He credited the Marines he had served with for supporting his unorthodox approach, and noted that institutional flexibility, however grudging, had ultimately allowed tactical innovation to flourish. The historian asked if Marcus felt vindicated by later changes in rifle doctrine. Marcus replied that vindication was less important than survival, and that he would have used a fence post if it had meant bringing his friends home alive. The final chapter of the fence post carbine story unfolded not in combat, but in the quiet spaces where military history becomes institutional memory. By the 1990s, the Marine Corps had fully transitioned to modern assault rifle platforms that embodied many of the principles Marcus Webb had accidentally advocated: lightweight, controllability, high magazine capacity, and suitability for close-quarters engagement. The doctrinal rigidity that had initially resisted carbines and infantry roles had given way to a more nuanced understanding that different tactical environments demanded different tools. Yet the specific story of a Montana ranch kid and his unauthorized weapon remained largely unknown outside specialist military history circles. This obscurity reflected a broader pattern in how institutions handle innovation that emerges from below rather than being directed from above. Marcus Webb had never been officially punished for stealing and modifying the carbine, but neither had he been officially recognized for the tactical innovations his actions represented. His Distinguished Service Cross recommendation, submitted by Staff Sergeant O'Brien after the 48-hour engagement, had been downgraded to a Bronze Star and then apparently lost in the bureaucratic chaos of wartime record-keeping. No medal was ever awarded. His name appeared in unit histories and after-action reports, but these documents were archived rather than celebrated. The fence post carbine existed in the gap between official history and lived experience. Marcus Webb died in 2003 at the age of 93, having outlived most of his Guadalcanal companions and witnessed changes in military technology that would have seemed like science fiction during his war. His obituary in the Billings Gazette mentioned his Marine Corps service, but focused primarily on his ranching career and community involvement. The fence post carbine passed his son, who understood its significance and eventually donated it to Marine Corps Museum at Quantico, Virginia. The weapon now resides in climate-controlled display case, its jury-rigged stock and worn finished testament to hard use under impossible conditions. The museum exhibit that houses the carbine includes a brief description of Marcus Webb's counter-sniper actions and the weapon's role in tactical innovation during the Guadalcanal campaign. Visitors who stop to read the placard learn about the 9 confirmed kills, the 48-hour engagement that broke a sniper siege, and the subsequent influence on Marine Corps weapons doctrine. What the placard cannot convey is the texture of the story. The fear and frustration that drove a young Marine to violate regulations, the split-second decisions under fire, the institutional resistance to ideas that came from privates rather than generals, or the quiet satisfaction of a Montana rancher who had proven that sometimes the best answer to complex problems is simple, practical innovation. The broader lesson of Marcus Webb and his fence post carbine extends beyond military tactics to organizational behavior generally. Institutions create standards and doctrine for good reasons: consistency, predictability, and the accumulated wisdom of past experience. But these same standards can become barriers when environments change faster than institutions can adapt. The tension between standardization and innovation is inevitable and necessary. What distinguished the Marine Corps on Guadalcanal was not that it immediately embraced Marcus's unauthorized carbine, but that it eventually allowed combat results to override bureaucratic preference. Staff Sergeant O'Brien's decision to authorize Marcus's continued use of the weapon, the battalion commander's decision to support experimental counter-sniper teams, and the division's ultimate decision to increase carbine allocations all represented institutional flexibility that saved lives. History tends to celebrate bold strategic decisions made by senior leaders while overlooking tactical innovations made by junior personnel responding to immediate problems. Marcus Webb never appeared in newspaper headlines during the war, never received public recognition for his 9 sniper kills, and never sought the spotlight afterward. His contribution was local, specific, and grounded in practical necessity rather than theoretical brilliance. Yet his impact rippled through the institution in ways that shaped doctrine and influenced thousands of Marines who never knew his name. This is how most innovation actually occurs, not through revolutionary breakthroughs, but through small adaptations that prove their worth in practice and gradually change how organizations think about problems. The fence post carbine story also illuminates the relationship between individual initiative and institutional culture. Marcus Webb's actions were technically legal. Violations of regulations regarding equipment authorization and supply chain procedures. In a more rigid organization, he would have been court-martialed regardless of combat results. The Marine,